Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, hear about the importance of picking your corn hybrids and the differences of how ear flex timing affects final grain fill. Wheat, and more wheat. Hear about our high-yielding ladies of the field that are in high demand. Turk discusses the recent USDA report and river levels.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben, Lynn, and Turk. And Ben, I'm going to let you lead the discussion today.
Yeah, so one of the things I was thinking about this week and that we've spent quite a bit of time talking about, and Dylan and I are doing some work on, is we're doing division factors by on each one of our corn varieties. So we're trying to figure out what the divisible factor is based off of kernel depth. So we're doing our counts now. We're getting ready. We'll probably be picking corn in the next couple weeks. So we're out at many different plots, pulling 17.5 feet, counting all the ears, counting all the kernels around, counting the length, and then what we'll do from there is once we take that strip trial off of that, we'll use that as a division factor. And we kind of already have an idea about which varieties are going to flex in depth versus which varieties are going to flex in kernel count or length. But I think it's really important as we're starting to get ready to buy seed corn for next year to diversify that package when you're looking at that, because you may have a 108 day, 111 day, and 115 day to diversify your maturity on when you get through pollination. But it's also a good thing to be thinking about how that corn makes yield, because in a year like we had this year, products that flex in depth are going to be hurt compared to products that flex in length. And the reason for that is because once you get a product that flexes in length, once you get it through pollination, it might abort a few kernels at the tip of the year if it runs out of moisture. But once you get to that point, your harvest is already kind of made. But just because there's way less of a chance for fill to be an issue. Am I explaining that correctly?
Yeah, you're there.
So when you have to depend on the very last portion of grain fill to come up with 30, 40, 50% of your yield rather than 20 to 30% of your yield, because that product that flexes in length already has a lot of that set up. It's important to be able to flip-flop back and forth. So either hybrid can be nipped. If you get absolutely destroyed during pollination, a product that flexes in length is going to get hurt way worse than a product that flexes in girth. So products like the 108 day and the 113 day, from what I can kind of gather so far, so our 2413C-30 and our 2408C-30 are both products that are going to be that lengthy high kernel count style of product. Products like the 111 day are going to fall into that shorter ear type, girthier ear type, but it's going to put a lot of its final yield touches towards the very end of fill or pollination. So it's good to diversify both directions, but it's also good, like if you're going to be planting this Merschman hybrid and you're going to be planting it against competition XYZ, you want to make sure that you're looking at the catalogs, asking the correct questions, because you don't want 211 days that are going to flex the exact same direction. You want to be able to diversify as much as possible when you're making these plans, because this year, like I said, it's going to be a good year to show that our division factor, when we were going in the milk and dough stage, we really thought we were in the, here locally, we really thought we were in that, 0.7, 0.6. Things looked like they were going to be really good. We had awesome fill nights. Well, all it takes is 1 week, 4 days of 90+ degree weather, and that kernel shrunk down, the dent got real deep, and here we are where we probably lost, I don't know, we were kind of talking about 5% off the top. What's your thought on
I think we're closer to probably double digits at this point.
Right, so, and that's going to affect those products that flex in length more than the ones that flex, or it's going to affect the ones that flex in girth rather than the ones that flex in length.
And that's when we look at that too. There is management tactics, I guess, that can go into doing that. Mother Nature obviously can have a big say, but when we're looking at those type of products, it's very important to have late season fertility. Yep. We're looking at those products, and those are probably products that we want to, when we look at them as a placement standpoint, those are going to be the ones that seem to be a little more I guess racehorsey, like we want to put them on our better dirt, good water holding capacity. Right now, some of the folks that we have talked to just about trying to get, I guess, learned up on strip till, they're talking about one individual double fungicide application at that R5 time frame to make sure that the plant late season health is still there, so that way that plant still uptakes those nutrients, trying to get as much protein packed into that kernel as possible, and that's going to be really important in those particular hybrids, because that's, like we said, how we make our yield. And when we put all those together, we're just trying to take the secrets away from the corn plant and trying to have more variables that we can control versus Mother Nature. And I think that's where a lot of times we run into some issues on corn, where guys miscalculate what they think the yield expectation is, because if they take a factor of 90 and it's really, or a factor of 9, it's a factor of, or 0.9, and it's a factor of 0.6, there's surprises, or vice versa if they do it the wrong direction. And it's really hard to do that mathematically without being boots in the field, cracking open that cob and seeing what we got going on there. And we run into some stuff, particularly on the Stein side, where it's an aha moment, where you look at why some of those shorter, more determinate style ears crank out that yield. Well, they're packing a lot of density into that kernel, and by the time we get to harvest, that the cob might be the size of our pinky finger, whereas you look at a product that's more of a flex, little less kernel depth, that thing might be the size of your thumb. So looking at those characteristics help you from a placement standpoint, help you from a management standpoint, and like I said, we can, if we know that information, we can place them, we can manage them, and we can take a little bit of the variability out of the yield component.
So your suggestion is you need to know, mix up your ear types is what you're saying.
Yep.
And then obviously that would tie into population too, and then your fertility when that hybrid needs that fertility. So that's the takeaway today is just don't plant the most popular variety that's winning the plots, because that's not next year, that's this year.
Correct.
So in other words, you need to plan a strategy of managing whatever stresses that could potentially be a problem next year with population, ear type, and how it makes a yield. And you'll end up with a better batting average.
Yeah,
correct. And I also do think, as you were sitting there talking, I kind of have this sneaking suspicion that nitrogen, sulfur, and boron management affect the products that fill late, the deeper kernel depth. I think those late season applications of those are making sure that product that corn hybrid doesn't run out when you flex in girth. I mean, I think that's going to be a very key thing as you're managing those varieties as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of conversation related to that I think we are just scratching the surface on. Chris Perkins in particular has done some research on investigating some of these hybrids, on how they do that. If you haven't listened to him on the Strip Till podcast, he has some good information on that. But we're getting to the point where us in the industry can do what we can do, but farmers also need to take a little bit of an initiative and get out there in their fields, because we can give you the blueprint, but sometimes there is characteristics in a field, characteristics of Mother Nature that determine where yield comes from, more so than us just trying to find a very broad overview. So being boots in the ground is very important, and I think the guys that do that are taking the management up a little bit. They're doing stuff that's maybe a little bit off the cuff, but they're also pushing the envelope when it comes to the yield potential of these hybrids, and the same with soybeans as well.
Right. Nope, I completely agree. What do you got going this week?
So this week has been a lot of conversation on wheat, and a lot of conversation on wheat to the north. And I know we've talked about it a lot, but we have definitely changed the narrative when it comes to wheat, on where wheat is historically grown. Unfortunately right now the ultra earlies are in a deficit, so
you can just say it. You did your job better than I did mine.
Fair enough. We're sold out.
Well,
you did your job better than I did mine.
So we have
it's in the control of our dealers now.
Correct.
They have supply. We have sold everything that we have to dealers. So still check with your local dealer. He may have a few bags yet, so it's not all. It's out of our control now. It's
Correct.
in the control of our dealers, but it's not all bad news, right?
No. So the Maddie is one this past year in particular, and this isn't I guess for full transparency. we're not just saying this because we've sold out the ultra early and now all we have left to sell is Maddie. Like, the Maddie is a staple. It is one that we have talked about before in Wisconsin, was still taking off in the month of June at a very respectable test weight and yield. And by very respectable, I mean highest farm averages of wheat ever gone out there.
It's our number one seller too.
It is.
So I mean, in other words, the most productive product we have for top end yield, we have a good supply yet.
And what I really like about it, when we push it to the north, it gets a little bit more plant height to it. So those guys that are after the straw value for their wheat, we're giving them an earlier option, can get the straw out, and then they can still potentially get worst case scenario 4th of July week if they wanted to try to double crop. And I know when we get to the north that gets a little bit more finicky, but very excited about those options that we have for the double crop and wheat in general. Like I said, it is something that the price has come down. Is it as glamorous maybe as it was a year ago? Probably not, but the guys have figured out that wheat belongs in their rotation. It is now a cash crop instead of a convenient crop, and we're having a lot of success in pushing this wheat product further and further north.
And to go along with Maddie, we have Julie, which you want to talk about a variety that puts out huge seed and huge yield. In fact, sometimes Ben and I scratch our heads a little bit and say, gosh, they should be buying more Julie, but then it costs a little bit more to plant it because the seed's so big, but plant big seed, you get big yields, is what the old timers always said. So don't overlook Julie if you're planting Maddie. I mean, they're both at the top of the yield trials, and
heaviest test weight product on the market, so by far. 64, 65 pound test weight. If that's something that you can get premium on, run with the Julie.
Yep. So that's another option for you too.
And back to similar conversation we just had with corn. When you have that big seed, you have that opportunity to really pack that full of protein and increase that weight. So, yield is nice, but we also sell in weight. So that Julie gives you a really nice option to pack some pounds in and really blow up that scale as you're taking into the elevator.
Yeah, and I don't know if everybody understands, how do we come up with these names? These names are all named after my relatives, okay? Merschman ladies, and actually Julie's my daughter, so I know when we name that one, I always try to pick the best ones, for my immediate family, but they're all good. They're all good.
There you go. Yeah, speaking of that, we're not only planning for 2024, we're planning for 2025, and we got some really, really cool names that are coming back into the book. For seed production for this year, we have a Katie that we still haven't figured out if we're going to coin it a hyper early, but we have a Katie 16, we have a Peyton 2, and we have a Genie 14 or 15. I can't remember exactly where I'm at on the count for that, but then we are going to have full scale production of Millie 8. And the Millie 8 is going to be the earliest thing that we have sold yet to this date, probably a day or two earlier than where we are at with the Binti. And these other three products that will be blown up and used for seed production next year, we might have a few bags available of those, but we're just trying to dice through some of these hyper early products and figure out which one's the best. Out of those three products, those might be a day earlier than we are with the Millie 8. So we're really pulling this thing back. We're taking a step every year trying to get earlier and just as high yielding. So that's a little ways down the tunnel, but that's the vision that we're shooting for.
Yeah, get as early as we possibly can get, and then also pack it with medium earlies that are the highest yielding things we've ever seen.
Yep.
So that depending upon which side of the fence you want to get on, do you want to go purely for yield, not as much for double crop? It will work for double crop, obviously, or just get something so early that, like you said, Ben, you're in your combine, and the neighbor says, "Oh, getting the combine out to cut wheat," and you said, no, I'm putting it away, I'm done with wheat. So, and that's what we're really trying to focus on these ultra earlies or even hyper earlies, as we hope to have soon.
Upper Midwest double crop.
I think the part that's cool with that, just in our conversation with our originators when we were talking about these hyper earlies, that a year ago, and I've probably said this before, it was really fall in love with this Millie. It's going to be the best. It's going to be around for a while. We really don't see a lot of stuff coming down the pipeline that looks to be taking its place. And a year later, you've got 3 of them in the
Three of them nipping at its heels.
Yep. So the industry or our breeders and our associations have done a really nice job of pushing this envelope, and I would say seeing the vision that we've had with our wheat sales and offering us products that will fulfill that vision and make sure that we are living up to the standard that we're pushing here at Merschman's with ultra early, high yielding, great double crop, and pushing that envelope clear up to now Wisconsin.
Yep. Turk, do you have anything for us?
Well, Ben, the government agreed with you this week and lowered the corn production number a little bit, but they found another 800,000 acres of corn. So although we came down, we have more units and or more acres to get it yield from. So
that was my fault.
Market's actually kind of going down, but it's probably more of a function of that time of year. And people are cleaning their bins out and getting ready for the new harvest and making sure that we're ready to go. A lot of folks are harvesting already and putting it away. But the soybean number again came down in yield a little bit, just 0.8 of a bushel or something like that. And they stayed the same on their numbers, but they dropped their exports. And so the soybeans actually long term look pretty positive, but they've taken a little bit of a dive since the markets come out too. But I think it's just harvest pressure in that time of year again. But the new saying now is it's not rain makes grain, rain makes water in the river. And that's our biggest issue that we're going to be fighting here is basis on barges for shipping.
Yeah, I think when I was looking at river levels at one of the river terminals, I don't remember if it's New Orleans or the next big
Memphis
one. Memphis is probably the one. We are at the same level as we were at mid-October last year, so we're a month early and we're floating at the same level. But
yeah, it's not going to close down the river. It's just they're going to have to lighten them up, those barges, and then that's going to affect that basis. So
there's some rain in the forecast.
There's rain in the forecast, and getting those water levels up will help us all around.
Yep.
Well, it's always a challenge, no matter what year it is or when it is, and we always have something either internally or internationally. Well, that brings us to a couple jokes. I only had one, but then I kind of told one off the cuff here right prior to filming, and they decided we should add that one in too. So if they don't laugh, it's because they already laughed, okay? All right. This one here, what does a hat salesman drink to get him going in the morning? What does a hat salesman drink to get him going in the morning? Cappuccino.
Cappuccino.
Okay. Now, there's a...
That wasn't very good.
Well, it depends if you like cappuccino or not. Anyhow, the other one is one my dad told me years and years ago, and it was about this factory worker. And every day he would leave work and go through the guard shack, and he had a wheelbarrow, and he had it full of stuffing, stuff that packing stuffing, and the guard says, oh, he's trying to sneak something out. So he would intently go through all that stuffing and make sure there was nothing in there, and he said, okay, there's nothing there, go ahead. Well, he did that day after day after day after day, and the guard said, I know he's stealing something, and he'd go through the stuffing and he wouldn't find anything. Finally, after several weeks of this, he says, okay, I know you're stealing something. What are you stealing? And the guy says, wheelbarrows. So always be alert, right? Anyhow, thanks for watching today or listening if you're doing it by podcast. We sincerely appreciate your business. It's time to get your wheat on order, time to start thinking about corn and soybeans if you haven't already. And like I said, the only reason you wait to buy Merschman soybeans and corn is because you want to pay more. So we want to get you the best price, and so now's a good time to talk to your Merschman dealer or your local area sales manager. So we'll see you next week. Take care.